content.
Right, thank you, Your Worship. So this is the Arts Centre, and as we mentioned earlier on in the workshop, that we would bring back some more information. So the further advice requested is to provide a response that considers funding for the Arts Centre from general rates, to consider baseline funding year on year, request for consideration of a review at year 3, that the review of the Arts Centre model be completed in the first year of the LTP, and the rationale for the rates, rates charge versus rates remission. And so the first thing we'd note is that the Arts Centre already has 110,000 allocated to it in the Strengthening Communities Fund for the first 2 years. So what you see below is additional funding on top of that 110, and if that's rates funded at 820,000, there's a 0.12% increase in year 1, but no further increase allocated to that in subsequent years because it's already in the base rate when we go to do year 2. If I can, so and that flows through right through the 10 years. On the rates remission, rates charge, the rationale for charging the rates is that you then can give back to the Arts Centre the amount that does not include any rates for commercial entities or leases that are already paying rates. Whereas if you have a remission, the risk is that actually you just remit across the whole precinct, and therefore those commercial operators get a bit of a windfall in that they're not charged the rates. So that's really the reason why it's a more transparent way to ensure that the commercial lessees pay the rate, but the community ones get the remission. And we'll take questions and seek to answer from there.
I don't believe it. There's none. Sam, do you have a question? Oh, no?
Just to clarify, because this is different to the staff advice we received the other day. And so I'm just trying to understand what will be baked into the draft LTP as opposed to amendments. So is this what's going to be baked in now? Because I thought we'd had a bit of a compromise position.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yeah, this is the position that's in the numbers that I've outlined, Councillor. Yeah.
So when, I was in the room. When did we land on funding them 820 grand for the next 10 years each? I don't recall that at all.
It was going to be dependent on the review, though.
The compromise was also reviewing in the first year, and this was sort of, this appears to me to be intended to try and avoid another campaign next year, then a campaign the year after that. And this is a compromise because they're asking for 1.8, 2.3, so it is effectively a compromise. But yeah, a review in the first year as soon as possible makes sense.
I'm still not clear though on how we got to 820 grand a year for each year. Even the staff advice after the discussions wasn't 820 each year.
If we've interpreted it incorrectly, let us know now. We're just basing it on,
That is kind of confusing, isn't it? Because it was 820 and then 650 and then 5 something, and then it's changed over the last 2 or 3 days. It just
And there's nothing from the Capital Endowment Fund or sort of anything. It seems a bit strange.
So to make that very clear, I think it's been interpreted differently.
So when this was when we put this together, what we aimed to do was that we understood that there was some concern that from the submissions there was a desire from the community that the centre be given some funding, and that after discussions between the CE of the Arts Centre, an amount of 820 was the amount that was needed, and so by reducing it in subsequent years, we as staff sort of took it that maybe we hadn't quite got that balance correct, and that 820 should go in each year. And then I suppose there's an assumption, what do you do in the outer years? Because we want to make sure that there's something there to be debated and proposed at a future point. What do you do in years 4 to 10? To the point that Andre's made, is to make sure that we don't have it coming back each time. But there was a caveat to that we do a review on a sustainable funding model going forward and bring that back, and the staff and the Arts Centre bring and present back to council what is a model that is sustainable over the long term, and that could get reviewed. So it has, you're correct, Councillor McDonald, it has moved and it's shifted, and what we've tried to do is blend those various different perspectives into one relatively straightforward proposal, albeit one that has a rate impact in the first year, and put that up to be tested and for some guidance to be given. So that's really how we've come to be at that position. If we've misinterpreted it, then we'd certainly go back and reflect that back into the model and bring it back at a later point. So happy to take that.
Yeah, Sarah?
Yeah, Phil, if I
Sorry, Sam.
can... Yeah. Oh, no, so, look, completely get that, Bean. Thanks for your work on it. Where I thought we'd landed the other day was that we acknowledged there's a need to fund the Arts Centre. There was a need for the review of the Arts Centre, and that we would look at maybe baking something into each year, certainly not nearly $1 million, and then subject to that review, we would look at some of the capital endowment for the next couple of years, and then restrike it at that point in time. But I thought, based off the reviews that we had undertaken, we were still quite worried about the Arts Centre. So I'm not sure putting $8 million on budget rateable is the right way forward. But again, I'm happy to just do an amendment if I just have a different impression of how we left that meeting.
Okay.
A different understanding, I should say. Yeah.
Thank you. Sarah?
Yeah, I think this is about where I thought we'd got up to. I think one of the things that we did discuss was the fact that because there'd been such overwhelming support for the Arts Centre, knowing that it would have a rates impact, is that we were going to do it from rates rather than the Capital Endowment Fund. There was more certainty of funding over time, which would mean that we wouldn't have another large campaign either next year or in a couple of years' time, but also that the review would happen and then we could change the amounts based on that review if we felt like, if we needed to in the next annual plan or whenever that review was done. This was to provide some certainty that we were supportive based on the overwhelming support from the community. So this is where I thought we were up to.
Mm-hmm. And just thanks, Tim, I'll get you in a minute. Just to bear in mind, everyone out there, that the 100, just correct me if I'm wrong, the 110 is on top of the 820.
Correct. Yes, okay. Correct.
And if and it will be soon, as quick as possible, I hope, a review is done and it's seen that they can cut their costs down or charge for car parking or we can lower that number going forward. That's not set in concrete forever, is it?
Well, I think that's certainly my understanding, Your Worship, is that actually we bring back a staff and the Arts Centre work together, and we bring back something that we believe is a sustainable, workable model, and that we can present to you to be tested and challenged, but that we are comfortable represents a sustainable model. Now, what that looks like, I'm not sure, but we would well and truly expect it to be certainly before the next LTP and potentially within, whether it's ready for the next 12 months in terms of the annual plan, given that that budget can actually start in the next 6 to 7 months, is possibly a bit debatable, but not long after, I would have thought.
It'll be interesting to see, because they've trimmed it up from 1.8 down to 0.8, for argument's sake. They may have already taken some steps to change the model of what they do, but I don't know that until we get their review, and it will be interesting to see what they have done to do that. Tim, then Yanni.
Yeah, I actually agree with Councillor Templeton and the Mayor. This is where I thought we'd got to. The key for me is the review, because unlike the Arts Centre's campaign, the council has always been supportive of the Arts Centre, not that you would have known it from their campaign, but this is actually to ensure that people realise that we are. But the key is the review, and it's not just their review, it's our staff putting into that as well, because we need to know that figure, and hopefully it will come down. But again, it's the longevity and survival of the Arts Centre that we're looking at for the next 10 to 50 years. So I'm supportive of this.
Just through you, Mr. Mayor, we'll just make the point that we're setting the LTP budget. You know, we're not signing a cheque at this point. You know, so we're setting the budget, and as you said, the review would take into account a number of considerations, including the use of the Community Endowment Fund or other options, depending on what's found. Yeah. And at any annual plan process, as Bede has outlined, the decision can be reviewed as well as to what's required. Yep.
Brilliant, thank you. We have Yanni, then Sam, is that you again?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll do Yanni and then you, mate.
I was just trying to see where the advice is on the Ducks proposal that we've passed a resolution to get the advice. I'm so struggling to agree to this or give feedback on this until we get the advice back on what we're doing with the Ducks.
So we gave some advice in an earlier presentation that the Ducks is in a very early stage at the moment. So there's not a concept. Well, there's a sort of concept design, but there's not a preliminary design. There's not a design that costings could be done off. What they have advised is that they are open to a grant or a loan if we're unable to purchase it or because it's outside their act. So they're open to a grant or a loan. If it was a loan, it would mean that they would then build it and then be able to repay the loan from the lease income they get. If it was a grant, it would mean that actually they could build it and then they could put their revenue from the lease straight back into the operations. So that was...
Right, so where does that fit in with the 820 that we're considering?
It doesn't fit in, it's completely
separate.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. As you know, Yanni, I was really keen on the council buying the ducts and doing something similar to what we did at the old municipal chambers, get the thing fixed and at least get it done. They have said they can't sell it to us because of the Act, but it was always being thrown in our face. If we didn't fund them, we would end up with it back anyway. So I was trying to circumvent the system and cut out the middleman, so to speak, but it's turned out they cannot sell it to us. We can't.
But I don't want to, I guess my feedback is I don't want to agree to any funding for the Arts Centre unless we've got a really clear way forward for the Ducks.
Good call.
Could I add something to that conversation, please?
Over here. Oh, there you are.
As Mary pointed out, they're not in a position that we can cost anything at this point. That will become part of the review that we do with them for a future decision at annual plan, long-term plan. We're just not at that point, and neither are they.
Yeah, but I think that was the mistake we made last time we agreed to fund them. Some of us wanted that funding tagged to restoring the Ducks, and we didn't support that at the time. And that was when we put in the $5 million or whatever it was over the period of time. So, I think we should have something. I'm just wondering, is there kind of aside from the budget, is there some sort of MOU or agreement we're going to sign with the Arts Centre? Maybe it's a funding agreement or some sort of mechanism.
That'll come up in the review.
And also beforehand, as Russell said, this is putting money in the budget. It's not signing a funding agreement with them.
Yeah, so
actually this is money in the budget, so we can go into negotiations and a funding agreement with them, and we can bring some of that information back then. As Andrew said, it's just too soon to be able to cost out anything to do with the Ducks.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. But so there's another process once we agree to the budget to work out what the security is of the funding and what it goes towards.
But you also got to run part, and what will come out of all this, say, for argument's sake, it's $10 million to do the Ducks up. Someone, might be us, I don't know, gives them a loan of $10 million. That's $1 million a year at 10% return. It's $500,000 at 5% return. That means if someone goes into the Ducks, it's going to be $500,000, which is 10 grand a week, which I think anyone would struggle to pay as a person in there. So in my head, it doesn't stack up. So I'm just throwing that out there.
Lots of heritage funding available from central government that we should be trying to
That's
access.
correct. If they can get the funding from someone else and it's given to them, if we give them a loan and they've got to pay us back, it doesn't work in my head.
So just to be clear though, so there's no misunderstanding later, a few years, Councillor Johansson, is this funding is proposed for operational funding. It's not proposed for the ducks. That's a different project outside that.
Correct. Okay, no, enough on that. Right, we've got Sam and then Mark and then Andre and Sarah.
Yeah, sorry, I'm still not understanding it. Why has the staff advice changed around the split from rating to capital endowment fund?
We've tried to present this as alternative staff advice. It doesn't necessarily replace the previous. As has been said, our interpretation of the advice presented 2 days ago was to come back and show councillors what the impact of funding the Arts Centre from general rates would be. Staff are not suggesting that this replaces the other advice. We're suggesting that you now have two sets of advice that you can
So this is
create amendments from
yeah.
or debate on the
Because
day.
every single one of the workshops we've put out our initial advice, you have accepted that or not accepted that and given direction of further advice you want. So this is a response to the direction we've got. So quite a few, our initial advice to everything was quite different to now. You've given us guidance and asked for further advice, and we've come back with that.
Okay.
So is this an option or is this baked into the draft plan now?
Through you, Mr. Mayor.
I'm not clear on that.
No, through you, Mr. Mayor. This number is in the numbers that I've presented earlier. So that's at the moment it's in.
Right. So it's not an option. It's the now recommended staff position.
That's correct. But if that was to change,
can we be really clear that these are not the recommended staff positions? These are, we have given our advice. You have asked us for further direction and modification to that. And so now we have responded to that, the direction the council gave us, and put up what the scenario would look like based on the direction we believe we've got from you.
So this can be amended either way or the other later.
Okay, I must have a different recollection. That's all good.
Okay, Marcus.
Yeah, I tend to be with Sam on this. I thought it was more rates neutral in the first year or two, and we were doing that review, and I certainly don't disagree with the quantum going forward, subject to review, of course, but I seem to recall, along with Sam, that it was more rates neutral in the first year or two, so seeing it going as 0.12 add-on to the rate is a surprise to me.
I think as far as the rates go, I think Jake brought up the other day that it makes more sense to charge them the rates, don't give rates for admission, but give them a bit more dough. Otherwise, they can't or won't pass it on to the right people, because it's a bit of a
I agree with that
mess.
small portion, but there was a larger quantum of capital endowment fund in the first year.
So you saw. So if in the first year, if you funded that through capital endowment fund, that rate increase would then move to the second year. So you would. So that it's only rate neutral because you have that rate increase in that first year, and that's sustained throughout.
But it gets you through the hump of next year.
Okie dokie, we're getting on to it now. We've got Andre, please.
I'm all good, thank you.
Thank you. Sarah? No. We're really into it. Melanie?
I was just going to say what we already said. I would be shocked if one person in the public came back if we funded this from rates based on the number of submissions. I would be completely shocked. But they're welcome to do so. And if they're watching,
shall I
let
give
us
them
know.
your personal number? I'll get them to all contact you directly.
Okay. Righto. Thank you very much. Carry on, please.